Hi, let's talk about parabolas. A parabola is the set of all points in a plane equal distance from a fixed point called the focus and a fixed line called the directrix that is not containing the focus. So if I call point O my center or my vertex, then the distance from my center or my vertex is called my focal length. So my distance A is called my focal length. This parabola is a parabola that opens to the right. So its equation is given by y minus k quantity squared equals 4c times x minus h quantity. The center is given by hk. The axis of symmetry is the line y equals k. The focus is h plus c because we're moving c, or in this case, so a here equals c distance from the vertex or the center, so we're moving c distance, and the k value, so our y value doesn't change. Our directrix is the line x equals h minus c because we're going to the left c distance. Now, notice that in our picture we have set the origin to be our center. But in our equation, I've said the center is hk. So for our picture, h and k would be 0, 0. Okay, in general, we could have any h and k. You should put all of this information, the standard form, the center, the axis of symmetry, the focus, and the directrix, on a 3x5 card. Okay, this is what I'm going to expect. If I give you the standard form, then I'm going to expect you to be able to tell me all of that information. What the center is, what the axis of symmetry is, what the focus is, and what the directrix is. Here's the other thing. You have to be able to draw the figure. For most of the homework questions, you will need to be able to plot the points to determine whether or not which direction the parabola is facing or how everything is going to lay out. Now, the other thing is, what happens if I have x minus h quantity squared equals 4c y minus k? So in other words, what if I turn this parabola and have it facing upwards? That's what you typically see in algebra. Okay, so you need to be able to also give me that information for the center, the axis of symmetry, the focus, and the directrix. And it's the same thing. So you're going to have x minus h quantity squared equals 4c y minus k. Your center would be hk. Your axis of symmetry would be x equals h because now it's going to be your x minus h is going to be squared. Your focus, your h value is going to stay the same, but your focus is going to move up and down. So you're going to be adding the c to the k value, and your directrix is going to go down. So you're going to be subtracting your y value, the k, your c value from your k. Now, I've only talked about it opening to the right or opening up. You could also have it where it opens to the left and opens down. This is why you have to plot your points so that you can know where your focus is going and whether it's opening up, down, left, right. Okay? And you're going to see it as we go through the examples. Next, we have the latus rectum. This runs parallel to the directrix and passes through the focus. Its length in a parabola is 4 times the focal length. So if I know that the focal length is 2, then the latus rectum is 4 times 2. Now, there is a homework question over that involves this concept. Next, standard form. If I tell you that you have y squared equals 4cx, then that tells you that the parabola opens to the right or to the left depending on whether or not c is positive or negative. If c is positive, then it opens to the right. If c is negative, it opens to the left. If I tell you that x squared equals 4cy, then it opens up or down. If c is positive, it opens up. If c is negative, it opens down. Here, you also know that in the top two, in these two, that the vertex or the center is 0, 0. Now, if I give you x minus h squared equals 4c times y minus k, then I know that this is the general form. My vertex is hk, or my center. It's called vertex or center for parabola. And the rules for c follow the above. So if c is positive, then it opens up. If c is negative, it opens down. Also, if the x minus h squared and the y minus k were switched so that it was y minus k squared and the x minus h were not squared and on the other side, so that it followed the pattern as the very top equation, then I would know that it opened to the left or the right depending on c, just like it did on the second slide of the notes. Next, general form. Notice that my general form is either ax squared plus by plus c equals 0, or ax plus by squared plus c equals 0. So here, my general form depends on whether I'm oriented left or right. You should also know that I only have one squared term. That squared term tells me whether or not my parabola is points to the left or points to the right or points up or points down. How do I know which way it points? Depends on where my negative is. Okay, so all of this depends on how I'm oriented. Okay, whether my axis of symmetry is a horizontal line or whether my axis of symmetry is a vertical line. Now, I should also note that in none of the conics that we're doing in this course, that I have taken out rotating conics, that we will not do any conics that are being rotated that are not perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical. All right, next, sketch and discuss the parabola y squared equals minus 12x. So because this is y squared, we know that it points either left or right. So that tells us that we have minus 12x equals 4cx. So minus 12 equals 4c. So c equals negative 3. Therefore, we know that the focus is negative 3, 0, which tells us that the parabola opens to the left. We know that the directrix is x equals negative a negative 3, which is a positive 3. This gives us the graph shown, and we have an axis of symmetry that is y equals 0 or the x-axis. Sketch and discuss the given parabola. x squared equals 5y. We know that because it's x squared, and we know that because the 5 is positive, that this parabola will open upwards. We have 4c equals 5, so c equals 5/4. So that tells us our focus is 0, 5/4. Our directrix is y equals negative 5/4. Since we're opening upwards and our vertex is 0, 0, or our center is 0, 0, we know our axis of symmetry is the y-axis, which tells us that it's x equals 0, so we have the graph given. Find an equations of the parabolas described. The focus is negative 3, 0, with the directrix x equals 3. This means that c equals negative 3, that because it's negative, the focus is negative. Because the x value and the vertical line, we know it opens left. We have y squared. The formula is y squared equals 4cx. So y squared equals 4 times negative 3x. Y squared equals negative 12x. So we have the graph. If we were to have graphed negative 3, 0 and x equals negative 3, the other thing we would know is that if we find the distance between negative 3, 0 and where x equals 3 hits the x-axis, which is 3, 0, and we find the midpoint between those two, that has to be the center, which is 0, 0. Find an equation of the parabola described. The vertex is 0, 0. It contains the point 2, 3 and negative 2, 3. So we're going to put the point into the equation and find c. Since the y values are the same, we know that x squared equals 4cy. So negative 2 squared equals 4c times 3. So 4c equals 12c. So c equals 1/3. So x squared equals 4/3 y. Our focus is 0, 1/3. Our directrix is y equals negative 1/3. Our axis of symmetry is going to be x equals 0. And so our graph is going to look like a parabola opening upwards. Write the parabola in standard form. State the vertex or the center, the focus, the axis of symmetry, and the directrix. Y squared plus 4y minus 2x plus 6 equals 0. We need to complete the square to write as y minus k squared equals 4c parentheses x minus h. That means we need to move the x term and the 6 to the other side of the equation. So that means we have y squared plus 4y plus blank equals 2x minus 6. We take half of 4 and square it. So we have 2 squared, which equals 4. So we add 4 to both sides. Simplifying, we have y plus 2 quantity squared equals 2x minus 2. Factoring out the 2 on the right side, we have y plus 2 quantity squared equals 2 parentheses x minus 1. This tells us that 4c equals 2, so c equals 1/2. Our center or vertex is 1, negative 2. our focus is 3/2 minus 2, and we have the 3/2 minus 2 because it's h plus 1/2. And since h is 1, so our focus is found by h plus 1/2. Since h is 1, 1 plus 1/2 is 3/2. Our directrix, so we find our directrix by taking h minus 1/2. And since h is 1, we have x equals 1/2 as our directrix. Our axis of symmetry is y equals -2. Write an equation for the parabola with the axis vertical containing the points 0, 5, 2, 5, and 3, 14. Because we have 0, 5, and 2, 5, we know the axis of symmetry is halfway between 0 and 2, which tells us the axis of symmetry is 1, which also tells us that h equals 1. We know that the standard form will be x minus h quantity squared equals 4c times y minus k, because the y is staying the same but the x is changing, so that means that it's going to be opening upward or downward. So we have, putting in the h equals 1, we have x minus 1 squared equals 4c times y minus k. We're going to call that equation A. Putting in all 3 points, we have 3 minus 1 squared equals 4c times 14 minus k. We have 0 minus 1 squared equals 4c times 5 minus k. We have 2 minus 1 squared equals 4c times 5 minus k. Now, using these 3 equations, we need to find c and k. So if we simplify all 3 of these, we have 4 equals 56c minus 4ck. We're going to call that equation B. 1 equals 20c minus 4ck. Call that equation C. 1 equals 20c minus 4ck, and call that equation D. Now the last 2 came from the previous last 2. Now we're going to use A, B, C, and D. We're going to multiply D by -1 and add it to B. So negative D is -1 equals -20c plus 4ck. When we add B plus -D, we get 3 equals 36c. Then solving for c, we have c equals 1 over 12. Using our A, B, C, and D equations, and that c equals 12, we're going to put c equals 12 into equation C to find k. So we have 1 equals 20 times 1 over 12 minus 4 over 12 times k. Simplifying, we have 1 equals 5 over 3 minus 1 over 3 times k. Multiplying through by 3, we have 3 equals 5 minus k. So -2 equals -k, so k equals 2. Putting k equals 2 and c equals 1 over 12 into A and simplifying, we have that A becomes x minus 1 quantity squared equals 1 over 3 times parentheses y minus 2 close parentheses. Using the form of the parabola, x minus 1 quantity squared equals 1 over 3 y minus 2. Now for the general form, we're going to expand so that we have x squared minus 2x plus 1 equals 1/3 times y minus 2. Multiply through by 3, so we have 3x squared minus 6x plus 3 equals y minus 2. Set it equal to 0, and we have 3x squared minus 6x minus y plus 1 equals 0. Please let me know if you have any questions.